And yes, I am saying American football a lot because not a lot of places consider American football the same as global football, which the Americans call soccer. So it's a whole, controversy between the names and all of that. But after we start the episode today, I'm just going to say football for clarity and to make it easy on Phil. Um, but yes, this episode is about American football. Yeah. I didn't know that at all. Okay. So, hi everyone. Today I have with me Philip Brabbs. I met Phil through another guest of mine, who shared that he was someone that knows a whole lot about American football. And so I got the opportunity to meet Phil and get him on the show to talk to us about American football. So Phil, thank you so much for joining me today. I know that you have a pretty impressive background. You played football in college. You now run the Business Plus Tech program at the University of Michigan Ross School of Business, I believe. But I will give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to our listeners, and then we'll jump into our conversation today.
Yeah, well, thank you, Samantha. I'm so excited to talk about American football. I've spent a lot of my life on the sport. Actually, I started out as a soccer player, and which would,
Mm,
I guess, be called the football,
yeah.
and which eventually translated into American football. So, a little bit about me is I live here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I went to the University of Michigan as a student studying engineering, but also as an athlete. I was recruited to play football here at Michigan, with the dreams to potentially play in the NFL. I ended up getting injured my final season and ended up taking a career in consulting, and I've been in product management, and I've also been an entrepreneur as well. And now I'm back at Michigan teaching and developing student programs in the area of business and technology.
That is awesome. I'm sorry about your injury, but if you made it to the NFL, maybe you would not be here with us today
This is
talking. So, silver lining, I guess. um, all right, so let's jump straight into it. Like I said at the beginning, most people in the world knows about soccer or what we call football in the rest of the world. Not a lot of people know about American football, or if they know about it, they just know it's a sport that's played in the US. Um, so if you can, could you describe for us, I guess, what is American football or what is football for you?
mm. Well, I mean, like I said, I started in soccer, and in soccer, the goal is to get the soccer ball across the goal line into the net, right? Football is similar in that you want to get the football across the end line, right? But you can't kick it, you can't throw it. You actually have to have possession of the ball when you pass over that goal line. And it's not just a goal, it's a goal line. So you
Mm,
got, I think, 53-ish yards, 53 and a third to be exact, yards across the width of the field, which you need to get the ball across that plane. So football, it's 11 on 11, which actually I believe soccer is 11 on 11. I never even
it
actually
is,
made that
yeah.
connection. Um, and I think that the difference is you switch out players. So you have an offense, you have a defense, and then you have special teams, which is think of the kicker and the punter. Um, they're the ones that kind of work on the transitions to start the game with the kickoff, to punt the ball, and to kick the extra point or the field goals, to attempt those tries. So it's a really, in some ways, it's a very simple forward game. It's get the ball across the other line and stop the other team from getting the ball across the line. So kind of like a rugby type format,
Mm,
but with the forward pass, with the specialization of the different players. You have a quarterback, a running back on offense, plus you have a wide receiver, plus you have an offensive line. You have a lot of different types of players who specialize, and they execute plays. Whereas like soccer and rugby are very fluid sports, right? They just kind of,
mm,
even kind of like basketball, very fluid. You don't set
mm,
up a lot of different plays. Whereas in football, you have plays. The offense goes out to execute a play. whether it be like a pass play or a run play. There's a lot of time in practice spent learning and executing on those plays. And then there's also some time in practice trying to understand what the other team is going to do and trying to
Okay.
predict what play they're going to execute so you're in best position. Like, hey, it's a third down and 7. Are they going to throw the ball? Okay, we think they're going to pass the ball. Well, you're going to want to defend that differently whether they're going to run the ball. So a lot to learn about the game of football. But as basic principles, get the ball across the end line, stop the other team from getting the ball across the goal line.
Okay. All right. So you said a lot of stuff inside of there that I want to unpack a little bit. I know a lot of like our exposure, and when I say our, I say like non-Americans, like a lot of the exposure is from television and movies, right? So you would always see the coach with like a board with a bunch of X's and O's and lines and stuff. And so yeah, I think I guess those are the plays, right? Um, okay, so you talked a little bit about offense and defense. And I understand that these are different people within the team, right? So where you may have 22, 24 players in a soccer match that are prepped and ready to go for American football, it's a lot more, right? Because you would swap actual sub teams within the team to play offense or defense. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's very, very difficult at the collegiate level for someone to play, they say, both ways, both on offense and defense. And
Mhm.
Michigan's last Heisman Trophy winner, which is a whole nother, that's the Heisman Trophy is the best player in college football.
Okay.
Was Charles Woodson. Charles Woodson was a defensive player, and he was one that I don't know if he's the only defensive player to ever win the Heisman. Typically, an offensive player wins the Heisman. Typically, it's the quarterback. But he won the Heisman. But he would play wide receiver and actually play offense as well, and that's very rare. Now, when you play youth football, you will play both sides of the ball because you have less people. You have 18 players, and so
Mhm.
people are going both ways, and your running back, who's the most athletic, will also play linebacker. And so it's more common in youth football for you to get experience on both sides of the ball. But as you mature and matriculate into the collegiate level, and especially the NFL level, you only play on one side of the ball. So therefore, you'd need 11 offensive players, 11 defensive players. But you have to understand too, depending on what play you're running, the way you're defending or the way you're trying to, move the ball, you might put more receivers out there. If it's a pass play, you might have 4 receivers out there. So it's
Mm.
not just 11, it's 11 plus a couple more receivers, plus you have a backup running back who gets in there a lot to run the
Yeah.
ball too, because for one running back, that's a lot of contact for a whole game. And so usually you have at least a couple running backs. So it really quickly actually gets much higher than that 11 plus 11 you mentioned. And that's
Hmm.
not including special teams where you have someone who snaps the football, someone who punts the football. You even have more players on special teams. And so you're really looking at the collegiate level, probably 40 to 50 players who probably play in the game, if not more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not
That's
like you're 11 soccer players and you're 4 substitutions,
hmm
a game. A lot of players are
yeah,
getting into the game.
yeah. That's a lot of people to take care of, and we'll talk about the different levels of football in a bit. But is it different at the NFL? Like, is the size bigger, smaller, more specialized, I guess, than college?
Yeah, the key difference is actually in NFL, you're restricted on how many players you can have on your roster. I think it's
Hmm.
only 55, something around there. Whereas in college, depending on the level, there's different levels of collegiate football. That's a whole nother conversation. But like at Michigan, you'll have probably 110, 120 guys on the team. So
Wow.
NFL, it's professional sport. The league actually limits the amount of players you can have, whereas in college you're only limited by scholarship, and a
Okay.
scholarship is given to in Division 1 college football, it's 85 players are offered full scholarships, academic scholarships, or well,
Okay.
athletic scholarships to pay for their academics.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. That's interesting. Um, And so we talked about the offense, we talked about defense, but you also said some things in there like um, you said something about downs. I know that I always hear about like fourth and down and fifth and down. And if someone has not seen the pitch, do you call it a pitch, like where the game is played, or is it a field?
We play on a football field.
Okay. So if anyone hasn't seen the field, there's a lot of lines. There's a center line, and then there are lines that progress in, what is it, 10 yards per line or
Close.
something?
It's every 5 yards. They tend to mark every 5 yards. So it's
Okay.
the middle of the field is at 50, and then you
Okay.
kind of go 45, 40. As you move towards the goal line on each side.
Okay. Okay.
So where's the 5 yard line?
Where is the 5 yard line?
On the football field, where would the 5 yard line be located?
The 5 yard line would be 5 yards from the goal line.
Correct. And there's two of them, right? There's the
Yes.
right. So it's not 100. Although it's a 100 yard field, because you have your side of the field, which goes 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, all the way to the midfield line, which is 50, and
Mm-hmm.
then it goes downwards 45, 40. You'll hear sometimes when someone breaks away and it takes a run for a touchdown, you'll hear the announcer go, and he's on the 40, the 35, the 30, the 25, 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown. And that's them running across those lines.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead and
And
Cocker.
yeah, yeah, it's not too different, not too different, except we don't measure the distance, I guess. But so we heard a few things there. We talked about the length of the field, right, more or less. We talked about the goal line, and touchdown, I guess, would be equivalent to shouting goal in a soccer match. Yeah.
Yeah, there's multiple ways you can score points in football,
Okay.
and there's the touchdown, which is ideally what you want to do is you want to be able to carry the ball across the end line, or sorry, the goal line. And then what I didn't add is there's 10 yards in the end zone. The end zone, you can
Mhm.
score anywhere in the end zone. So if there's a pass and you catch the ball in the end zone, it's a touchdown as well. So that's an additional 10 yards. When you hit that zero line, 10, 5, 0, 0 is the goal line, and there's 10 more yards. And that whole box or that rectangle is called the end zone. And so
Okay.
when you score a touchdown, you get 6 points. It's the most points you can score. And then you have an option to kick an extra point. And it's called an extra point because it's an extra point. So you go from 6 to 7.
Okay.
You could also, instead of kicking the extra point, you could go for 2 points. The ball's placed on the 3 yard line, and you can snap and kick the extra point, or your team can try to go for two. I would say 99% of the time, teams kick the extra point because 99% of the time the kicker will make that. Whereas that 2 point conversion is not converted as equally. Maybe it's 50%
Mhm.
of the time, less than 50%
Okay.
of the time. And so it's
Okay.
riskier to go for the 2 points, although it's worth more. And so most times, 99% of the time, they will kick the extra point, unless if there's a time in the game where it makes more sense to go for two.
Okay.
So that's several of the ways. But what I didn't mention, well, you can ask questions on it if you want. What I didn't mention was you can also kick field goals, which are 3 points.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask, what the difference is with punting or kicking,
Yeah,
because you said both words. And in my mind,
you're right.
punting the ball means like taking it a little way. That's what punt says to me, like mentally, but I don't know.
Well, I was a kicker, and so there would be people that would say, "Oh yeah, you're a punter, right?" I was like, "No, no, 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 no. I'm a kicker, not a punter." So the key difference is the punter. You know how a goalie punts the ball, not from
Yeah.
the ground, but
Hmm.
that's a punt, right?
Okay.
So in football, when it's fourth down, teams could go for it, which means they could try to get a. We haven't talked about downs yet, so that's kind of confusing. But when there's a transition, the team can punt the ball, to the other team, and with that punt, you're trying to preserve field position. So you're trying to punt the ball
Mm,
40 or 50 yards down the field to have them so that way they have much further to go to get to their goal line, which you're trying to
okay.
defend against. Whereas
Okay.
whereas a field goal kicker is also known as a place kicker, and it's a place kicker because you place the ball down. So you
Mm-hmm.
place it down, and then they try to kick it, and you have a holder who is the person who places it down on the ground, and you can
Mm-hmm.
kick your extra point. Again, kick. You kick the extra point, which is the kicker, or you can kick a field goal, which is again on a fourth down. You can choose to attempt to kick the ball through the uprights, which is what you do on the extra point. And if you make that, it's 3 points. So that's another
Okay.
nuance to the game is you can kick field goals for 3 points.
Okay. So if I understand correctly, punting the ball is not necessarily to help your team, but to make it more difficult for the other team.
Yeah, you're giving the ball back to them. So right now
Okay.
you have possession of the ball. It's fourth down.
Mm-hmm.
You could try to run a play to get a first down, which means to get over the. Well, we'll talk about that. The downs. I know it can be confusing, but
Mm-hmm.
if you can't get a first down, move the ball to a point where it's a first down, then the other team gets the ball right there. You lose possession right there.
Okay.
So, which would be if you're on your side of the field, that would be really bad because they wouldn't have very far to go. So rather than go for it and risk giving them the ball right there, you
Mm-hmm.
punt the ball, which allows you to punt the ball. Most people can, at the collegiate level, are punting it 40 to 50 yards downfield um, to a punt returner.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's talk about downs and stuff now. All right.
Okay, let's get this
We
done.
have an understanding of the field, right? So you have the 50-yard line, which is the middle of the field, and then you go by 5 yards towards the goal line, which then gives you another 10 yards to like get to the end of the field. So
Yes.
how do those downs relate to the placement on the field? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the lines are really just to help the refs, place the ball where it needs to go. Because if you got rid of the lines, and there's penalties, which is a whole other object, other situation within game. That ball needs to kind of be moved. You don't know where to go. It also helps if you're on offense. You're trying to get a first down. Okay, so when you have possession of the ball, you get 4 downs, which you could also call them tries. They don't call them tries, but that might be for some people who don't know American football. A try is an attempt. So you get an attempt to move that ball 10 yards, right? Which is, if you're not in the English system, it's close to 10 meters, but not quite, like 10 yards, um, which I guess would be, I think, I don't know, that's less than 10 meters. So you, you would attempt your first down, you run the ball, the running back takes it, and he gets tackled 2 yards after 2 yards. So now you have first down's over. It was first down and 10 because first being the down and 10 yards is how many yards you need to go to get another first down. So now that he got tackled after 2 yards, okay, what down is it now, Samantha? What's after one?
Two.
It's the
Second
second
down.
down. It's second
Okay.
down. And how many yards do we have to go now?
8.
8. It's second down and 8. Okay, now
Okay.
now the quarterback throws the ball to the wide receiver and it gets tackled out of bounds 1 yard shy of the first down marker. So the
Yeah.
first down marker, there's a chain gang of individuals who mark where the first down is. So they're the chain gang, but they have the marker. So he got tackled out of bounds with 1 yard short of the first down. What down is it? And how many
Third
yards to go? It is third down and how many yards to go?
one.
And one.
So
You
they will
got
call
this.
that. So then they will call it third and one. Third down and one.
Third and one. Third and one.
Ah.
It's that easy.
Okay.
And so you're the coach now. And there's lots of coaches. I think there's like 11 coaches. So you have a coach, offensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator makes the play call into the quarterback. Now that you're learning about football, what play would you call on third and one? What would you? I'll give you some options. Would you
Yeah.
run? Would you pass? I'll give you two options. Third and one.
Run or pass. Um. But but this is close to what yard meet like what yard point on the field. Does it matter?
Yeah, I don't know that it matters. Just say you're at
Okay.
midfield.
Okay. So I guess for 1 yard, maybe maybe you could like run or throw the ball. I don't know.
You would run. You would run.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
it's less risky to run the ball. A handoff is way
Okay.
less risky from the quarterback to drop back, who could get sacked, tackled, stripped.
Yeah.
Plus, they put the ball in the air, could be intercepted, so the other team could then catch it instead of you. So a
Yeah.
run is much more conservative. If you only need 1 yard, it's like all you got to do is push that line and drive that running back. So
Yeah.
now, if it was 3rd and 13, they're going to be passing the
Then
ball.
yeah. Okay.
So that's one thing about football. It's a very strategic game, but you can kind of figure it out based on down and distance what that other team is going to do. And so why that's important is because if you're the defensive team, if it's 3rd and 1, you're going to put in big guys up, lots of them, and you still have to. You can't say, well, they're not going to throw the ball, because they do. They would, and you don't defend against that, they would score, right? And so you still have to
Yeah.
protect against the threat of a pass, but you know that they're probably going to run, and so you're going to run a defensive scheme that puts you in the best position to stop the run.
Okay. So so because the points are only given once you cross the goal line, um getting a touchdown is, I guess, is it more valuable because there's so much more work that goes into actually carrying the ball across the line because you have to get all the way across, right?
Yeah, I when football was first developed, and it might have been the late 1800s. I think it might have been in Canada. I'm not sure the actual history of it. It was called football because you actually got more points for the for after the touchdown. You scored the touchdown, and maybe that was worth 2 points or 3 points, and the kick after was worth six.
Mm,
So you made more points. But as the game has evolved, kickers have gotten very consistent, and they also have stronger legs, and so they can kick it through the uprights from 50, 55 yards away, and so it's much easier to score a field goal, to kick a field goal successfully, than it is to get the ball all the way to that goal line. So
okay.
yes, that's why you have that proportion of points, 6 versus 3.
Okay. Okay. And you said up something. Is that the thing that looks like the big tuning fork? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I've never viewed it as a tuning fork, but that's probably the closest thing it is. So they call them uprights because the left and right are the uprights, and
Yeah.
there's a bar as well there, and that's where you get your tuning fork, I guess. And
Yeah.
you need to kick the ball between the uprights and above that bar for it to be
Okay.
considered good. So in soccer, I,
Okay.
I was great at kicking the ball over the goal. I had a very
Yeah.
strong leg, but I only got bad looks from my coach. Whereas when I became a kicker, I got all good looks every time I kicked the ball
Yeah.
over the goal.
Yeah. Because it went up high. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Okay. So we talked about the downs and the yardage. We talked about the field. We talked about kicks and punts and all those things, but within there we talked a lot about the types of players, right? You have running backs and quarterbacks and
Nice.
kickers and stuff,
Okay,
and the
that's important.
yeah, and the guy that puts the ball down on
The
the
holder.
floor, like he has a role. Yeah.
Yeah, holder. Very important.
Okay.
The
So
snapper. They
a
snap the
what?
ball. The snapper. They snap
Okay.
the ball to the holder, which is a whole different position.
Okay. So did we miss any, like, what I guess, like, if you had to list them out for someone, would you be able to, or how much can you list, I guess?
I pretty much know every position. I think on the offensive side, the key positions are quarterback. That's the commander of the offense, is your quarterback. They're the ones that get the play from the coach, tell all the players what the play is. They take the snaps. You have the center. The center is the one who snaps the ball to the quarterback, and that's what starts the play. The quarterback then usually hands the ball off to the running back, who will then run the ball on your 3rd and 1, or on 3rd and 13, they might throw it to a wide receiver. Your wide receivers are the ones who catch the ball. There's also the people that protect the quarterback. So the quarterback or helps the running back, who will push the line forward, or protect the quarterback if it's a pass. That's called the offensive line. and you have the center who snaps the ball. You have the guards on each side, and then you have tackles, and that's kind of your line. And then you also have what's called a tight end, and your tight
Mm.
end is like a hybrid receiver, wide receiver slash lineman. So sometimes they'll block, and sometimes they'll go out for passes. And what you'll see, if you watch Michigan football, you have Loveland, you have another guy. I don't know his last name, but number 89 had a big game against Michigan State as well. But that's becoming, well, Travis Kelce. Who doesn't know Travis Kelce now because of Taylor Swift, right? Like uh, Travis Kelce is a tight end,
Okay.
and it's become a very popular position because they're very hard to cover because they're big, but they're fast too, and they can catch everything. And so it's hard to match up with that player. There isn't a player on the other side of the ball, on the defensive side of the ball, that matches up well with that position, right? If we're playing chess, there's not another. The chess piece on the defense doesn't match well to that, position. So that's all
Okay.
the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, you have the defensive line, which matches up with the offensive line, and you have your nose guard, you have you have your tackles, and you have your defensive ends, and that's your five person front, and then you have your behind them. So it seems in every position there's like a counterbalance position, right? So like for running back, the counterbalance to running back is your linebackers, and they're
Okay.
behind the line. And usually you have two or three of them in any scheme, and the linebackers make a lot of tackles. Okay, and then going further back, you have the secondary. They call it the secondary because they're like further back than everybody else, and they cover the wide receivers. And when I was in high school, I actually was a defensive back, and I was a big soccer player though. And I told my coach, "Who do I need to mark?" He goes, "Mark? This isn't soccer." He says, "We cover people." And so he made fun of me for the rest of my career in high school because I used the word mark because I was a center mid, played stopper a little bit, and so I always was looking like, who do I mark, right? When we
Yeah.
transition defense, who am I supposed to mark?
Yeah.
So it is that kind of mix up. I also learned later, I didn't know this, but in soccer, who are the fastest players in the soccer field? Like, what position does Messi play? What position, what I mean? You think like the strikers, right? Are
Hmm.
like, and that's why, like, especially when you're playing soccer when you're younger, you always want to boot the ball to the fast guy and they run and get it and they go score. Like that was kind of at least how we did in America. Probably shouldn't have been playing soccer that way, but that's how we did it. Actually, what I've learned is those fullbacks are some of the fastest players on the field. And I was like, why would your defenders be the fastest players on the field? Well, think about it. They're covering the fastest strikers. If they're slower than the strikers,
Hmm.
it's not going to work out. And the
Yeah.
same thing in football. We have defensive backs who cover the wide receivers, and they tend to be the fastest guys on the field. And if they weren't, the wide receivers would just go, and then the quarterback would just throw the ball to them all game long. And
Yeah.
so I found that to be interesting that in soccer, um, you similarly have really fast defenders to cover those very fast strikers
Mm.
or
Okay.
wing. They may be wingmen, I guess, is what they
Yeah,
are.
the wing. Yeah, the guys on the wing. Yeah. Okay. All right. This has been so much and a lot, but good information. So I'll take this moment to tell anybody if you need to hear that again, just rewind a little bit, take it again, because we're gonna go forward now. Um, with all of this that we talked about, right? We have a little bit of some idea now about the strategy and stuff. I used to watch a lot of Super Bowl games, not for the game so much, but for everything else, like the entertainment and the advertisements, because I love advertisements for some reason. But one thing that I always hear, which I think is a really funny word, but I don't necessarily know what it means, but is the line of scrimmage. So with everything we talked about, what is the line of scrimmage, and why is it important, I guess?
So you mentioned earlier about lines, right? You define lines, and so you see all those lines on the field.
Mm-hmm.
So the line of scrimmage is where the ball is placed. And if you could draw a line across the field, that's the line of scrimmage. So
Okay.
you start from there. That's the line of scrimmage.
So, but why do they talk about it so much then? Is it because you always have to put the ball down? Like, why is it?
Well, to be clear, it's not where the ball is placed, it's where the ball starts. So you have 10 yards from the line of scrimmage. So let's just say you run the ball and you actually go backwards 5 yards. The line of
Mm-hmm.
scrimmage is actually 5 yards ahead of that. So now you're 15 yards for a first down. You're 5 yards away from the line of scrimmage. So the line of
Mm.
scrimmage is where the ball starts on first down.
Okay. Okay.
I don't
All
know
right.
why they call
I'm
it
just
scrimmage. Like, why is it the word scrimmage? I have no idea. I wasn't.
sounds like something from Harry Potter to me.
Yeah, scrimmage makes me like when I scrimmage. I always had soccer scrimmages growing up, and we'd play like well, they weren't real games. You'd scrimmage another team. You'd like it's like practice. So I don't know why they
Mm,
use the line of scrimmage. I can't take
mm,
credit for that or any of this for that matter.
interesting. All right, interesting. Well, I'll just leave the scrimmage thing right there. Thank you. All right. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, we talked a lot about how the game is and a little bit about how it's played. I think that's a good starting point for anyone. But we also mentioned along the way you said like youth football, you talked about college football, we talked about NFL. Um I guess tell me a little bit how someone gets through their football journey, I guess, and along the way you could mention if there is any one governing body. I don't know if the NFL controls everything when it comes to football or if there are different entities that do that.
Yeah, great question. It's still I think being formed. Um, I think American football because of some of the science coming out around concussions. There's a lot of scare. A lot of parents are actually not allowing the kids to play American football. So there's, but the NFL obviously is concerned about that, and so they started the NFL 360 plus the NFL flag football system. So like I coached my son in NFL flag football. Okay, now they're involved in as much as they provide. There's NFL jerseys and NFL teams, but they're trying to promote the sport because they don't want to see the sport decline. Um, so if you want, if your son wants to play football, usually it starts with flag football, and that can start as early as usually around third grade is when it starts. Somewhere in
What
elementary school.
what age is that for
So third grade is like you're
listeners
8 or 9, eight,
to okay.
all right, 8 or 9, and there could be. That's when my son started. I'm sure there's leagues that are even as early as 6, 7. But you know, elementary school is when it really kind of gets going. Now, tackle football starts in same age, youth football 8 or 9, and it's not connected to any institution, school system. It's parents um, get the their son will not even try out. They'll go to the local team in the city in the community, and they'll play for that team. And usually it's dads coaching, fathers coaching. So I coached youth football
Mhm.
for a number of years. I did flag football, but then I also, as my son switched to tackle football, I started coaching that when he was in fifth grade. So a
Okay.
lot of it too, like, and it's changed. Uh, Football, when I was growing up, and still the case for a lot of cities, the middle school would offer football, tackle football. So that's starting at sixth grade. So you would play tackle football for your middle school team. So it was tied to the academic institution. In the
Hmm.
town in Ann Arbor that I'm in, they disbanded that. So you can no longer play football through middle school, and you have to play through a youth program.
Okay. And that is like what early teenage years, that
Yeah,
middle
going into early
school thing.
teenage years prior to secondary education and prior to high
Okay.
school.
Yeah. Okay. So then if it's so like complicated when you're younger, how then, because college football is a huge thing in the US, so how then do you get recruited into college football if you may not have had an opportunity to play when you were younger? Like how does that
Well,
happen?
that's a great question. Recruitment really starts like 10th grade. So, you have ninth grade and 10th grade to highlight yourself. Now, all film, every football game played on a Friday night in high school in the United States is almost on the Huddle platform. So
Mm,
HUDL, it's called Huddle, and you can see every clip. And so my son creates a highlight film. He played last week his last high school football game, and he
mm,
created a highlight film for himself. And he's already posted it to Twitter, and he already has college coaches liking it, you know, DMing him. And so to get noticed, you perform well for your high school team. That's one option. Another option is you travel in the summer to camps. So all these colleges have summer camps.
mm.
Typically, they're only a half a day at this point, and there's an opportunity though to showcase your speed, um, your talent on the field. So that's another kind of those are like the top two avenues. And there's other things that have kind of developed, but typically it's going to the camps and then it's performing well
Yeah.
for your high school team.
Okay. And the NFL is professional football when you're an adult, right? Post college. And college football, I believe, is managed by NCAA or something.
Yeah, it is at three levels: Division One, Division Two,
Okay.
Division Three, and so there's different
Okay.
divisions, but that's all managed by the NCAA. And then
Okay.
you also have NAIA, which is very similar to Division Three of NCAA, but there are several others. There's junior colleges as well that have football teams and conferences. But yeah, at the collegiate level, that's kind of like the start of your adulthood. You're a
Okay.
college, you're 18, you're 19, you're 20, you're 21, and at that point, depending on what level, Division One, Division Two, Division Three, you're given athletic scholarship to perform that sport at that school.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that's really the minor league system. The college system is the minor league system for the NFL. And you're actually required, NCAA and NFL have a partnership. You're required to actually be out of high school for 3 years. So basically, which means you need to play in college for 3 years to
Hmm.
be able to be eligible to, you know,
Yeah.
receive a contract in the NFL.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Has there ever been an exception to that rule where someone was so good and was not in college that they made it to the NFL still?
There was a player who tried to fight it. He actually was when I was at Michigan. He was at Ohio State. He was phenomenal. I think he won the Heisman. Maybe I don't know. He probably didn't win the Heisman, but he was phenomenal. They won the national championship. It was 2002. It was my fourth year at Michigan, and he was trying to challenge it, and it didn't pass.
Hmm.
Um, I think I do think it's kind of ridiculous that like if you're good enough to play professionally at this level, that these governing bodies of NFL of NCAA have kind of colluded to say no,
Hmm.
you have to play 3 years, and so I think
Hmm.
they're withholding earnings that you should be able to receive, and maybe over time they'll get ironed out, but as of now, you're required to play for 3 years in college, or I guess you could choose not to play for 3 years and sit on your bum. But you're probably not going to be ready, nor have the film to showcase to the NFL teams.
In hearing you talk about the progress of a player from, like from a kid up until adulthood, we talked a lot about sons, right? I didn't hear anything about daughters in there. When you talked about coaches, you usually said, the dads coached, and I understand that. I don't know if there's any female coaches at the NFL level. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what gender and diversity looks like in football.
Well, there's playing the game and there's coaching the game, and then there's even beyond that the back office. You know what I mean? Like who's running the show.
Hmm.
And I think what I see the challenges within American football, and I think it's well noted, is that there's a ton of African American athletes, and I don't know the breakdown if it's 50-50 between African American, non-African American, but the number of coaches in the NFL is not 50-50, right? It's not 50% African American coaches. It's like, again, I get the percentage wrong, but I wouldn't be shocked if it was like 4%, 5%, 6%, maybe 10%. Like it's not proportionate, and so we do have a problem, I think, on the racial side that doesn't make sense to me. That half the players are African American, but that's not really reflected in the coaching staff. To me, it seems like there must be a systematic problem, and I do think
Hmm.
the NFL is aware of that and is trying to address that and try to develop more African American coaches, which I think is really important. in terms of gender diversity, I think there was an NFL coach. I don't remember which team that a female coach came out. There's a female coach, and so I'm not sure if it's the Ravens. And she was like, so she was the first like assistant coach, and this is recent, probably in the last couple of years. At the college level, you're starting to see it a little bit too, but it's very like there aren't a lot of women coaches. Again, if you're not playing the sport, you're probably not going to be coaching the sport. I would assume that majority of coaches at the collegiate NFL level played the game, right?
Hmm.
So I do see more girls getting involved in flag football, which I think is great. I mean,
Hmm.
I think it's great because I don't know. I think football is a wonderful sport, whether you're a woman or you're a man. I think there's so much to learn from the game. So I think that's great that they're getting into flag football because that's a feeder, right? Like I said early on, like my son started in flag football, and
Yeah.
eventually his parents allowed him to play tackle football. So in terms of women playing tackle football, what you've seen the most is that women will like be the kicker, right? There'll be a soccer player and they'll come out and they'll kick on the football team. So we
Hmm.
had that last year. My son's team, we actually had a female kicker, and so that's kind of the entry. That's more the entry point.
Yeah.
But I think that'll change. I think more and more you'll see women playing the sport. It's just going to take a long time, I think,
Yeah.
because to develop in football is a very physically demanding sport, and so you can't just show up and be a football player. Now you can show up and be a kicker, right?
Yeah.
Because it's leg strength. If you were playing soccer for a while, you can translate that into kicking, but you couldn't just show up high school and start playing football, whether you're a man or a woman. That's a
Hmm.
tough, very difficult, leap to make. So
Hmm.
I am noticing there are I would say more of sprinklings of women getting involved in both coaching and playing, but it's not like a outpouring, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we'll have to tell the NFL and the NCAA to do something about that, right?
I think you have to like the NFL, like what they're doing to make sure that football stays alive by investing in flag football. They need to do that for girls. They have to make
Mhm.
sure they market flag football for girls, so girls see that as like I really wanted my daughter to play flag football. I think she would have been great at it, but
Yeah.
see, her brother did it. It was always boys, um, so she didn't really take to it. So I think we're going to have to market it so they realize that you know this is something that they can do and do well. Um,
Hmm.
and I mean, girls playing flag football at a young age, I think they perform very well. I mean, when I grew up, I don't know how it was for you, but we had co-ed soccer teams for a long time.
Hmm.
That was it's very common to mix. There isn't this gender divide, and now of course
Yeah.
as they get later, they start to create that divide. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that you'll see more racial, um, you know, less more parity within it, less of this, unevenness on the coaching side. And then I do think you'll see more women get involved because it's a great sport. I think women like the sport. I think women like I have four sisters. They are more into Michigan football than I am. And some of them could have been some really good football players
Yeah.
if they would have entered the sport. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that. What exactly is flag football, though? I know, like, from what I've seen on television, it's just people with some flags in their waist, and you run and you grab it. So I don't know, like, how is it very different from actual football to be its own sport? I guess.
I think you nailed it. You just grab
Oh, okay.
flags. No, it's similar in that you don't want the objective of the game is to get the ball across the goal line, right? And you want to prevent the other team from getting the ball across your goal line, right? So it's the
Hmm.
same basic principle there. Where there it starts to get vastly different is that it's a non-contact sport,
Okay.
and you're not supposed to actually make contact with the opponent. So you can't put your hands on them to block them. You can't put your arms around them to prevent them from moving. You literally grab the flag. And so, you know, just like tackle football, you run the ball, you throw the ball, you catch the ball, all those things, and then once someone catches the ball, the way you stop the play or stop the player, the football player from advancing is you grab their flag, and that's kind of like a tackle. So like
Okay.
in tackle football, you have to bring them to the ground, In flag football, you got to grab one of their flags and pull
Okay,
it in.
and tackling or grabbing the flag stops the play.
Yeah,
Um,
right there.
like whatever is happening. Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
and you can only grab the flag if the person has the ball. I mean, I could grab some other person's flag, but it's not going to do anything. You need to
okay,
grab the flag. It's your way to tackle them in a non-contact way.
okay. Makes sense. So thanks, Phil, for sharing all of that. We got through a lot of the technical stuff. So now we get to go to the more fun parts of this conversation, which is to talk about you and football. Throughout the conversation, we learned that, you played. We found out that your son is playing, and hopefully he'll get to play for Michigan, I guess. I
Mhm.
guess that's the dream, right? Um, but maybe tell us a little bit about you. Like, we know already that you started playing soccer and then you got into football, but how have you stayed connected to the sport outside of coaching your son, or helping him on his journey?
Yeah, I mean, similar to probably people who are Manchester United fans or Liverpool or really get involved in the World Cup, rooting for Brazil or their team.
Hmm.
American football is something that you have your local team, right, or the team closest to you. So for me, it's the Detroit Lions, and so growing up, I would watch the Detroit Lions with my dad, or even my mom and my dad, and you start to grow a passion for the game, and you'd sometimes even get behind a college team. So in the state of Michigan, the two biggest teams are Michigan State and Michigan, and so typically you're either a Michigan State fan or you're a Michigan fan, right? So
Hmm.
I'm sure soccer has similar things, right? Where you're either this fan or you're that fan, right? And
Yeah.
so you have that connection at such a young age, and so football kind of always stays with you, just like I feel like soccer. For I look at soccer fans, they're like so diehard always. And so even though I got a chance to play, I was a fan at a young age. And then I started playing, and I,
Hmm.
I had more of an appreciation for the game as a player. But I still, I think as I stopped playing after college, I became more of a fan, and a fan
Hmm.
of Michigan football in particular, because having played there, I knew what it took to play there, and it's kind of a brotherhood at that point once you've gone through that. And so I've carried that on, and so I've gotten season tickets for the last 20 years. So I have 4 tickets to every Michigan football game, and so I think through that fandom is kind of made me connected, and up until my son was born, and even my daughter is going to Michigan football games, and so kind of repeating that cycle of like introducing them to the sport through fandom, and then starting to play flag football, youth football, high school football, and if you're lucky, collegiate football.
Yeah. Well, I am going to go to my first Michigan game this weekend. So I hope it's not too cold, but I'm looking forward to seeing. Okay, right now, Phil is holding up a helmet in front of me, a Michigan helmet.
You get to see the winged helmet on
Yeah,
Saturday.
yeah, very nice. I'm looking forward to it. I really am. But this will actually not be my first time watching a game live, because I recently learned a few months ago that American football is played in other parts of the world, which I had no idea at all. I actually met someone um, who's involved with the football team in Barcelona, Spain, which I'm not talking about FC Barcelona. I'm talking about, there's a team called Barcelona Dragons that is in the mecca of European football, in my opinion, because I'm a Barca fan. But yeah, so I found out that football is played in other places. There's a whole league over there that I didn't know about. Is football, American football, that is played in any other countries besides the US and I guess Europe now?
Yeah, I mean, European football is there. The Canadian Football League has been a thing for a long, long time. And for some
Mhm.
players who don't make it into the NFL or drop out of the NFL, they'll go to it's called the CFL, the Canadian
Mhm.
Football League. And so it's a well-known league. The rules are a little bit different. I mean, it's still football, but it's a little bit different how the field and what the players can and can't do. But yeah, there's definitely a Canadian Football League out there.
Okay. All right.
And I do actually have a good friend of mine who played college football at the D3 level, and now
Yeah.
he coaches the I think it's the Prague Lions, and I think they're part of the European Football League. I'm not sure. I
It
actually have to research
probably.
that one, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's a bunch of teams. I'm looking. There's the Munich Ravens, the Frankfurt Galaxy, the Vienna Vikings, Berlin
Yeah.
Thunder. So
Yeah, is a lot. And some of these teams, I know the German matches are always live streamed, and it's legit. It's like legit American football being played in Europe, which was mind blowing for me. I really had no idea
mm,
when I heard that one. My next question is around what do you see as maybe changes to come to football? Have you seen anything recently that might help the sport evolve?
there's a number of things happening. I mean, one thing I had earlier was the fear of concussions. And football, these players are getting bigger and faster and stronger, and you think of the
Hmm.
physics behind those collisions and what that can do to
Hmm.
your brain, right? Which is just sitting in fluid, and then when you make that contact, your brain is propelled forward and makes contact with your skull, causing concussions and other micro concussions. So like the helmet, right? This is my helmet. The helmets don't look much different, but they are evolving. So mine's just like one piece of plastic,
Hmm.
with a kind of foamed, and just like this is not. It's pretty heavy too, which will put a lot of strain on the neck. If you look at the helmets now, there's different things going on that they're doing a lot of studies to understand how to, if there's a blow, how to have the blow not be direct, have it kind of like slide off, so you're not getting
Hmm.
that direct contact. And so I think the evolution of the helmet is going to be key in actually keeping the sport a sport, because
Okay.
eventually if it's deemed that this is too dangerous, right? Like if like if they don't add a seatbelt to the helmet, then I'm not sure people actually can play the game anymore. I think it's too dangerous. Um, at least that's a lot of the concerns amongst parents, right? Because it starts with parents letting their kids play football. It's not the
Yeah.
NFL. It's not college. It's, am I going to let my son or daughter play this sport? So I think you'll see a lot of evolution there. Other things that I'm seeing that are going on is players are wearing different technology. One of the companies is called Catapult, and what they do is they sew this device, kind of like a Fitbit type thing or an Apple
Hmm.
Watch type device, that measures how hard they're working. And so they can know. And I was talking to one of my former teammates who's at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as an associate GM, and he was saying that they use this technology to predict when players will get injured. And I'm sure soccer. I got to think that these soccer guys and gals have to be using them. But what it does is tracking your effort, steps, all this information around your movement, and it can say, hey, you put too much load on your body, like you need to rest. And so you have people who are in the background tracking this data and saying, hey, tomorrow you can do these 2 drills, but you're not doing these
Hmm.
5 drills. And so they're doing a lot better keeping players healthy and
Yeah.
actually competing. And I know basketball's using this a lot as well. I think football's starting to use this. I think soccer as a sport has been using it. And so they're getting much smarter using data analytics to propel the game forward for the betterment of the athlete.
Okay. That's good to know and pretty interesting tech as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, look on the back of soccer uniforms to see if there's like a square or something that looks like it was stitched in. Uh,
Yeah.
that would tell you that they're using that technology.
All right. So Phil, do you have any favorite player? Um, I guess outside of a team that you follow, do you have a favorite player?
Favorite now retired player probably. So Tom Brady was at Michigan when I was a freshman. He was a senior. He actually was the holder. Now that you know what the holder is, he was the quarterback too. But back then, it was really common for quarterbacks to be also the holder in case there was a mess up and they had to throw the ball. Um, so I think watching Tom and what he became in the NFL was phenomenal, but not surprising given what we experienced. That even that one year I was with him,
Hmm.
he was so determined, and I think he always had that chip on his shoulder. Like he never got the full nod as the guy, and so to
Hmm.
have to go in the NFL as a 6th round pick, and once he got his shot, when Drew Bledsoe, who was the quarterback, starting quarterback, franchise quarterback, got injured, he stepped up and then he never looked back. And I think he was still in the league today. This year, he'd probably be competing for another Super Bowl. Like he's just that good. I've never seen someone so competitive.
Hmm. And for our listeners, if you don't know who Tom Brady is, he is
Through Google
very well.
search.
I know who he is, and I don't follow football that much, but I think he also there's a lot of videos of him throwing the Super Bowl, what do you call it, the
It's called
the
the
trophy like across a
Lombardi.
boat, like
Yeah,
yeah,
Lombardi Trophy.
yeah,
Um, Across
yeah.
from boat to boat after they had won it. You're right.
Yeah, yeah. It was hilarious. So take a moment and check on Twitter, just Google who he is or something. You'll see a lot of footage. Okay. And then any famous person who may be famous for something else but also played football.
I mean, a couple come to mind, and this is sticking with the U of M theme. So Gerald R. Ford, he was the president. He was one of the presidents of the United States. He's actually from Grand Rapids, Michigan, but
Ah,
he was an offensive lineman, which are again the biggest players in the field. I think he was a center. I think
yeah.
Gerald Ford was like 5'9" or 5'8", like 100 and some pounds.
Yeah.
So football, it just shows you how football has evolved.
Yeah.
Then you also had The Rock. The Rock
Really?
played football at the University of Miami, and so I like him because he's still like so big and muscular. I
Yeah.
can only imagine what he looked like when he was at Miami.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so
I didn't
he
know.
comes to mind as well.
Okay. That's cool. That's cool. I didn't know about The Rock. That's pretty awesome. Okay. All right. And I mentioned the Super Bowl a little bit. Is the Super Bowl like the best of the best? Is it the end of the football season? So kind of like you have like World Cup, but you also have regional tournaments in soccer. Is the Super Bowl like the pinnacle of NFL football?
It is like, yeah, it is the pinnacle. I mean, it's the every year World Cup. So only so many teams make the playoffs based on how they do during the regular season. I think they
Hmm.
play 17 regular season games now, and then the top teams then go into the playoffs, and then the final game in the playoff is called the Super Bowl, and it's
Okay.
usually around February, early February, late January, early February. But
Yeah.
it's the biggest. I mean, you have in America you have professional basketball, right? The NBA, you have professional hockey, the NHL, you have professional baseball, MLB, and then you have the
Hmm.
NFL. I think the Super Bowl of those four, all the other ones play a series, right? It's a best of seven series in baseball, basketball, and hockey, right? So there's 7 games. In football, it's one game. You win or you lose. It isn't the best out of
Ah,
three. You don't play
yeah.
3 matches. Whoever wins two. It's one game, all the marbles, and they have the Super Bowl commercials are huge. I mean, everyone invests in the
Yeah.
Super Bowl. Tickets are outrageous. I mean, I think it's probably what $10,000 a ticket to go to the Super Bowl in U.S. dollars, and so it's it's big time. I mean, it's the dream of every probably football player that they could play in the Super Bowl, but only a few can make it, and that's why Tom Brady, to go back on him, I think he went 10 times.
Oh
And
wow.
so that's it's unheard of. I think he won 6 or 7. He won 7 Super Bowls. I mean, that's insane. So
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's pretty awesome. Okay. So I guess let's say someone listened to us talk today. They are now like super invested in learning about or starting to watch American football. um maybe they maybe too old to start playing now, but they want to watch. And let's say we also have parents who are interested in getting their kids involved. For those two audiences, what would you tell them to do if they listen to this episode today and they're like, you know what, I want to get into being a fan of football, or I would like to send my kids to play?
So I think it starts with finding a team, and I think there's two levels. There's the NFL, it's just the professional level, and there's the collegiate level, which might be hard for people who are non-Americans to understand why you'd ever follow a college team, right? It might feel like a club level sport,
Yeah.
but it's not the case here. There's a lot of money in it, and now there are college football players who are making $2 million a year as a college athlete now that they can make money off their name, image, and likeness. And
Hmm.
so it's big money, it's big sport. Um, so maybe there's a college team. I'm going to say Michigan's a fun team to get behind, but there are a lot of other teams too. So I would like either look at a professional team or a college team and just get behind it, because by watching the sport, you'll naturally get drawn in to the sport, get to know more about the sport.
Hmm.
Now, if there's a youth member that would like to get in the family that would like to get involved in the sport, I don't know what opportunities there are outside of the U.S. to get involved. I would say if there's flag football, I would definitely recommend you start there, because no need to start with contact. Learn the game, learn the rules of the game, and then flag is not that much different, except you add the shoulder pads, the helmet, the contact.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's more players, there's more specialization, but you at least now understand the game, the concept of the game, the downs. The quarterback throws the ball, the running back, and then you start to learn what position your body type and your athleticism is best suited for. Because if you're 6'7", you're probably not. There's certain positions you're probably not going to be. But if you're 6'7", you can put on some weight. You'd be a great lineman. I mean, you'd be an NFL lineman one day if you wanted to be. If you
Hmm.
really really work hard. But if you're 5'8", you're probably going to be a defensive back, maybe a wide receiver. So like your size really will dictate your position. Now, when you're younger, just try everything, right? Until you find something you really enjoy.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I would try
Okay.
to get involved in flag football if they offer that. Again, I don't know if they offer that in
I
other
don't know.
places.
They might be able to find rugby. Would that be helpful?
I think so. I mean, it is different. I mean, I think it's similar, I guess. Um, and I know rugby is popular in other places around the world. They take it's a very
Mhm.
serious sport. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good would be a good option if they like the idea. But if they want to get into American football, heck, why don't you go start a flag football league? I mean, it is a fun sport. I mean, that's why it's so popular here with youth. Is like it's a fast sport. There's a lot of like big plays. Whereas no offense to soccer, but I played it forever. I mean, I can see it being very boring. It's like a long chess match. It's like, oh, they're going to just pass the ball back and forth back there. Like, oh, they got a breakaway. Oh, they scored. It's like, okay, boring. I think I have the maybe ADHD or something, and soccer is just not there for me
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
But football it's a very like every play someone could score, right? And
Hmm.
so it's not like that in other sports. Baseball is also equally boring, I think. Um, I think basketball is a little bit more fast paced and can be exciting, but it's like, oh, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I mean, but I think it'd be awesome if you just like start a league, start a
Yeah.
flag football league. That would be like be an entrepreneur, like get some kids behind it and just have fun. I
Yeah.
think it's just have fun at,
Yeah.
at the young ages. Like it's all about people enjoying playing the sport, whether it be soccer or American football or flag football or tennis. Like enjoy it. Sometimes I feel like parents we put too much pressure to like be the best, be the best. It's like, work hard, yeah, but have fun, especially the younger years.
Yeah. All right. Well, Philip, we have gotten to the end of our call today. Um, Thank you so much. This was probably my best tutorial. Other people have tried. Other people have tried to teach me American football. Maybe I wasn't, listening close enough or something. But this was very informative. I know for sure I'll be able to understand what is happening at the game when I go this weekend. So that is great. Um, Before we leave, is there anything else you want to tell our listeners today that we didn't touch on?
Well, no, the other thing I have is like, so I got this to show off. So this is what you get. So what do you play for? Like, what does a college football team play for? Well, you
Yeah,
play for a conference championship, and so this kind of ages me a little bit. So this was in 2003. So we're talking
2003.
20 years ago. But this just to show you how much these people and fans like stick to their their collegiate football program is we're the guys that I played with, we're going to be honored on the field of the Ohio State game, which is our last. It's always our last game of the year. We play Ohio State. They're a big rival of ours, and
Mm,
we played them 20 years ago. It was the hundredth match against them. We won, ended up winning the conference championship. And then this year we'll be honored. All the guys are welcome back on the field, and so it's I don't know. Like I don't get it fully. Like why people care so much, but they're like the professional. I get professional. It's your local team. Wear the jersey. Yay, yay, yay. But like at the college level, I mean, some of these. I mean, these people like they didn't go to college there. No one in their family went to college there, but
yeah,
they dye maize and blue, and
yeah,
they're religious about it. And but from a player's perspective, we play for the championship. We want to win the Big Ten championship, and then if we win that and we have a good enough record, we can play for the national championship, which
okay,
is the even bigger ring. And Michigan this year is good enough where, and honestly, they have a good chance. They're ranked number 2 in the country right now, and there's a good chance that if we can get past Ohio State again, that we will play for a national championship, which would be amazing. We haven't won that since 1997, so
yeah.
it's been 26 years.
Well, good luck
Yeah.
to the Michigan team, the Go Blue team, the Maize and Blue team.
Yes.
And for anyone who is listening and not watching this episode, Phil was showing off his championship ring from 2003. So if you want to see it, go to our website or our YouTube or something and jump to the end so you can see his ring. Well, thank you again, Phil. This was great. I had a great time talking to you. We almost spoke for a whole hour and a half, which I think has been my longest conversation to date. So that's great, but I think it just says so much about the sport that there's so much to know. And it's a pretty exciting sport. So thank you so much for taking the time to share. And I hope somebody learned something new about this sport, and maybe there'll be a few more fans for Michigan
I
after
was going
this
to say,
conversation.
well, thank
Yeah,
you, Samantha. And yeah, if you need a team, definitely go blue.
go blue. All right, thank you.